Our glorious God appeared to our ancestor Abraham while he was still in Mesopotamia, before he settled in Haran. God told him, "Leave your homeland and kin and go to the place I will show you." So Abraham left the land of the Chaldeans and settled in Haran. After Abraham's father died, God had him resettle in this land where you now live. God didn't give him an inheritance there, not even a square foot of land. But God did promise to give the land as his possession to him and to his descendants, even though Abraham had no child. God put it this way: your descendants will be strangers in a land that belongs to others who will abuse them and who will enslave them and abuse them for 400 years. And I will condemn the nation they serve as slaves, God says. And afterward, they will leave that land and serve me in this place. God gave Abraham the covenant confirmed through circumcision. Accordingly, 8 days after Isaac's birth, Abraham circumcised him. Isaac did the same with Jacob, and Jacob with the 12 patriarchs. Because the patriarchs were jealous of Joseph, they sold him into slavery in Egypt. God was with him, however, and rescued him from all his troubles. God was with him, however, and rescued him from all his troubles. The grace and wisdom he gave Joseph were recognized by Pharaoh, king of Egypt, who appointed him ruler over Egypt and over his whole palace. A famine came upon all Egypt and Canaan, and great hardship came with it. Our ancestors had nothing to eat. When Jacob heard there was grain in Egypt, he sent our ancestors there for the first time. During their second visit, Joseph told his brothers who he was, and Pharaoh learned about Joseph's family. So Jacob went down to Egypt, where he and our ancestors died. Their bodies were brought back to Shechem and placed in a tomb that Abraham had purchased for a certain sum of money from Hamor's children who lived in Shechem. When it was time for God to keep the promise he made to Abraham, the number of our people in Egypt had greatly expanded. But then another king rose to power over Egypt who didn't know anything about Joseph. He exploited our people and abused our ancestors. He even forced them to abandon their newly born babies so they would die. That's when Moses was born. He was highly favored by God, and for 3 months, his parents hid him in their home. After he was abandoned, Pharaoh's daughter adopted him and cared for him as though he were her own son. Moses learned everything Egyptian wisdom had to offer and was a man of powerful words and deeds. When Moses was 40 years old, he went to visit his family, the Israelites. He saw one of them big wrong, so he came to his rescue and evened the score by killing the Egyptian. He expected his own kin to understand that God was using him to rescue them, but they didn't. The next day, he came upon some Israelites who were caught up in an argument. He tried to make peace between them by saying, "You're brothers. Why are you harming each other?" The one who started the fight against his neighbor pushed Moses aside and said, "Who appointed you as our leader and judge? Are you planning to kill me like you killed that Egyptian yesterday?" When Moses heard this, he fled to Midian, where he lived as an immigrant and had 2 sons. "40 years later, an angel from the Lord appeared to Moses in the flame of a burning bush in the wilderness near Mount Sinai. Enthralled by the sight, Moses approached to get a closer look, and he heard the Lord's voice. I am the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Trembling with fear, Moses didn't dare to investigate any further. The Lord continued, remove the sandals from your feet, for the place where you're standing is holy ground. I've clearly seen the oppression my people have experienced in Egypt, and I've heard their groaning. I have come down to rescue them. Come, I am sending you to Egypt. This is the same Moses whom our ancestors rejected when they asked, who appointed you as our leader and judge? This is the Moses whom God sent as leader and deliverer. God did this with the help of the angel who appeared before him in the bush. This is the one. He is the one who performed miraculous signs in Egypt, at the Red Sea, and for 40 years in the wilderness. This is the Moses who was in the assembly in the wilderness with our ancestors and with the angel who appeared to him on Mount Sinai. He is the one who received life-giving words to give us. He's also the one whom our ancestors refused to obey. Instead, hi Amy. Instead, in their thoughts and desires, they pushed Moses aside, and in their thoughts and desires returned to Egypt. And in their thoughts and desires returned to Egypt. That's when they told Aaron, make us gods who will lead us. As for this Moses who led us out of Egypt, we don't know what's happened to him. That's when they built an idol in the shape of a calf, made an idol in the shape of a calf, offered a sacrifice to it, and began to worship what they had made with their own hands.